it's not really relevant what I enjoy. We have hobbies, we have relationships, we have business. It's like not, if you ask for everything out of one thing, it's kind of asking for too much. You know what I mean?
Okay.
It's like people
I
I like playing pickleball, right? I like playing
Okay.
pickleball, I like playing ping pong.
Okay.
If suddenly that's what my income depended on, I may not like it anymore.
Ah.
Right? It's like this business is my career.
Welcome to a new podcast episode of Real Estate vs. Technology. Super excited for today's guest. We actually, so you got to check out his podcast. He was actually on Real Estate vs. Technology, the man, the myth, the legend. If it's not woo, it's do. Just Grow podcasts. Nico. He was on our podcast. He was sitting in this hot seat with the guest that we have right now. And then I went to his last podcast, and his podcasts are live. And so they do like some podcasts is the do and some is the woo. And that was a lot more of a woo podcast. And our guest today was sitting right next to me. And I'm like, hey man, you got to be on the show. What do you think? And so on and so forth. He's like, all right, let's make it happen. So we have the one and only Lewis on the show. Welcome to Real Estate vs. Technology. He has a really cool company where today we're going to go deeper into digital marketing a little bit, his story. I really want to talk about email marketing, and I really want whoever's watching and listening to be able to take things from our show today to apply to their business so they can utilize it right now, right? I like actual shows that you can get into and you can listen to and you can actually apply to your business. And so basically, Orbis Marketing is what you got, right? You've been doing it. You went full-time. What was it, like 2022 you said we went full-time?
2 years.
2 years now. Congratulations and welcome on the show, bro.
Thank you, man.
So
glad to be here.
Of course. So you said the drive-in was pretty smooth, not too far. How far was it for you?
I'm downtown Phoenix. It was like 25 minutes, easy.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, it's like us going to the airport. Not too far.
That's why I scheduled it for this time of day, right? It's like,
Dude, no traffic, keep it simple, which is awesome. So what gave you getting into a little bit of your story? You're working, you're doing the traditional 9 to 5. And maybe it wasn't 9 to 5, but what got you to a point where you're like, I want to start my own business, want to do something for myself? What was that inclination? Because I know a lot of people out there, we're seeing a huge shift. I feel like ever since COVID and people just being like, hey, I can work from home. I don't have to commute. I don't have to, the whole economic ecosystem changed. I feel like there's a huge shift. And so what was that shift for you, man, that got you to a point where you're like, hey, I want to go on my own. I'm going to start my own company. And how did you get to where you're at today?
Yeah, I'd say there's a few pieces of this, and I'm definitely a talker, so do not be shy about pausing, interrupting, interjecting, moving me along, because I can tell a long story or a short story.
I love it.
But I only tell a short story if someone kind of encourages it to stay short.
We'll do medium.
Yeah, medium story.
Okay.
I did not have a traditional 9 to 5. I mean, it was traditional in the sense that it was, a full-time job with another company that wasn't myself, and all the pieces do intersect. It's like when you look backwards, everything does have a pretty logical connection between step 1, step 2, and step 3. If it wasn't, predictable at the outset, definitely it makes sense. Like you can trace and say, like, I understand how he ended up in this spot based on the path that he was on.
Yeah.
The first job that I took out of school was working for Bitcoin Magazine in Nashville.
Nice.
In person, hybrid in person.
Okay.
And so they had an office, no minimums, only about half the company was there in person,
Really?
let's say.
Okay.
And so I usually would wake up, take a couple meetings, eat lunch, and then like bike to the office because I lived pretty close.
That's cool, man.
And my roommate actually still works there, and I worked there at the time.
Yeah.
And so it was very chill. The office, honestly, people went there more so to hang out. So it's like you wake up, get your work done, and then you just go to the office to like hang out with your friends because that company is like a very fraternity type culture in a positive sense. A lot of people might hear that and like take that in a negative sense, but it's like everyone loves Bitcoin. The shared level of passion about Bitcoin was just crazy, and there's not that many other companies. It's a rare environment. I think I see the Andy Elliott books behind me. I think they're another company where there's just a shared passion and mission.
Yes,
like very infectious, and you just want to spend time there, even if you're like you don't even work there, and you just want to spend more time in that environment.
You do, for sure.
It's like I want to be like I want to be invited back here. Like it's just you just feel that way, and so it was fun to be there at that office.
I love that,
which is aspirational. And then shortly after, I got another job working for Anthony Pompliano, who's also pretty authoritative in the cryptocurrency Bitcoin industry. He's frequently on CNBC. He's had his own podcast for a long time.
Okay.
Kind of what made him popular. And I tell the story. I don't know if it's actually accurate in terms of like whether or not this is a big moment or I just assign a lot of value to it.
Yeah.
But he pretty famously debated Kevin O'Leary on CNBC, the Shark Tank guy, right? Mr. Wonderful.
Yeah.
And Anthony, he looked a lot younger at the time when he did this. Like he was probably like in his late 20s.
Okay.
And goes on CNBC and is basically, I don't want to say arrogant in a negative sense, but this young looking kid compared to, Mr. Wonderful is considered pretty credible.
Yeah.
He's like a super successful business guy. He's like, you don't know anything. Bitcoin's amazing. You're just an old guy who's closed-minded. I assure you, like, you're going to be telling me you wish you bought it earlier and that I was right the whole time. Just like a very bold, confrontational, on-air debate.
Wow. I like that.
Everyone's like, who's this kind of young guy who's got all this gusto? And so that was one of his big moments. Obviously, he had been doing a lot of work to even be in the position to get on CNBC as a young guy. So anyway, it worked for him. He had some employment-related businesses for the industry, trying to help people. It's a $1 trillion industry, or at least $1 trillion worth of assets in the industry. And so there's a lot of new opportunities for people to work in the industry. And so just helping people learn the subject matter and be equipped to work in that industry.
Yeah.
And the common trait of both Bitcoin Magazine and Anthony Pompliano is these were both businesses where a huge media presence was the backbone of the company.
Okay.
Right. So a lot of companies you've never heard of, and they're making a lot of money just because what they do is very expensive. These were media companies, right? The way that Anthony, like, we're not particularly close. Like, I mean, I could reach out to him, I'm sure he'd reply, but like just telling the story of like, he's a big creator on Twitter. He's a big creator on YouTube. And that's how he makes a lot of people aware of his products and services. Same thing with Bitcoin Magazine, right? When I worked there were 1.5 million Twitter followers. Now it's up to 3.
Wow.
And that's when you have that big of a reach and a distribution and you host an event for 20,000 people, you think of the conversion rates, right? It's like you have 3 million people that you're getting this ad to for free because of your social following and your email list.
Wow.
So those companies really gave me a lot of insight into the power of kind of not just email, well, I'd say email marketing, right? Just if you have a big email list, if you have a big social following, you are able to make a lot of people aware of what you do with no cost. And that's just a big asset and a big like button to push that a lot of people can't push that button. Like I don't have a button where I can press and I spend no money and 1 million people get the message.
Right.
I don't have that button.
Maybe one day.
Maybe one day. But I'm like having that button would certainly be useful.
Yeah.
And so that was a pretty important part of kind of my value structure in terms of like how I approach what utility, like what things are worthwhile when it comes to building a business. There's some other aspects of this. Like, for example, in college, I wasn't very much using social media.
Okay.
It's just difficult to get work. I was doing engineering, computer science. There's required a lot of like quiet alone time in the library to like grok the concepts. Just there's not really any other way through it but to do it that way. And so I just was not equipped to have the drug of social media and find myself in the library. I just didn't have some people maybe can do both. I wasn't one of them. So I shut that all down. And so the way that I consumed information through all of college was through newsletters.
Got it.
You subscribe to a person, they send you a weekly email with whether it's news or interesting blog posts, the type of stuff you receive on social media. It's just a delivery, right? Some people get the same information on Instagram. Some people get on Twitter. I got it over email.
It's more focused too, because you can just focus your attention on that one thing and not get lost in the scroll.
It's like, I want to keep getting, I like this. I'm not going to unsubscribe, right?
I love it. Yeah.
But that showed me, created a lot of affinity where, well, we also tend to like admire the people we follow online, whether we realize it or not. We build some, if we like them, we build some admiration for them.
Agreed.
And want to emulate them in some way, right? We all are kind of looking for role models, looking for inspiration.
Yeah.
And something inspires you, then you seek to kind of emulate it in some respect.
Agreed.
And so the people I was following at the time were the types of people publishing newsletters. They were bloggers, they're writers. And so that created a lot in my mind of like, what does success look like? What are the paths to success that I see? Well, all the successful people I'm aware of, besides some of the more traditional avenues, are these like writers who built a big audience over blogging and over email and then launched products to that audience.
I love that.
And so that's a lot of what inspired me when I was still in college to start my podcast, because, I'll list a few examples here. There's a guy named Nat Eliason, and he's really big on book talk, like book TikTok.
Okay.
And then he does really well on all the platforms. And he published a book called Crypto Confidential. He wasn't even a crypto guy when I first found him. Unrelated, but I loved his blog. It was called The Monday Medley. It was just like a reflection. He studied philosophy.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't huge, but like he had like 50, 60,000 readers.
Yeah.
And so I loved reading that. And then I just saw him release successful product back to back to back. He had an SEO agency. He had a course on, like, if you remember Realm Research, it was like a note-taking software that came out. It's kind of like Notion, or
so. He
was like the first person who told me about, like, his list was the first place I heard about Webflow.
Wow.
Years before Webflow was big, and Notion years before Notion was big. He was consistently ahead of the curve. and consistently launching these products that all hit.
Mm-hmm.
He's one example. And then another is this guy, Taylor Pearson, who wrote just really interesting. He was just this like guy. I don't really know what he did professionally. I think he worked in marketing. You remember his Tropical MBA? Have you heard of those guys?
Sounds familiar.
So another kind of online internet marketing, online entrepreneurship podcast. And he worked for them for a while, was a digital marketer.
Okay.
And he just loved finance. Like he liked Nassim Taleb, if you've heard of him.
Okay.
And he would write all of these blog posts about Nassim Taleb. And eventually, long story short, builds an audience, and then he raises a fund, and now he's a full-time investor.
Wow.
Just because he just wrote interesting ideas. So he was another kind of person I really wanted to emulate, who was a great writer, wrote really interesting thought leadership pieces, and then on the back of that, launched successful products and services.
So smart. I love that.
And so that model just really got built, like burned into my memory. It's like, okay, that's how I'm going to do it.
Super smart, man. And that's awesome. I love that. The concept and how all the roads led to where you're at today from the perspective of influence. And that's why I feel like anyone who's viewing and watching right now, influence is real. And it doesn't matter if you're watching it, reading it, or just observing a conversation, whatever it is, TV, radio, whatever your outlet is, it's real. And it's amazing how this is a prime example of what you were watching, consuming, and listening to turn into now opportunity for you. And so how now going into the process of starting a company and going in that direction, I mean, you could talk fear comes up, you could talk, limited beliefs, or when, why, how, what was the time where you're like, hey, you know what, like now's the time, let's go for it. We're starting the company. And it's you and your partner on this company?
Yeah, so I have two business partners
Okay.
on kind of the series of projects all under the Orbit umbrella. So originally it was Orbit Metrics.
Okay.
And candidly, I didn't start Orbit Metrics. My business partner had also taken a job. We weren't in business together yet, but we were obviously friends like a decade or so before then.
Yeah.
And he was working at another job and learned a skill set there, and then started freelancing with that skill set.
Okay.
And then was still busy, full-time employed. And just the way things were at the time, he had a higher paying job than I had. So it made less sense for the two of us for him to quit. It makes sense for me to quit to forfeit the smaller income than for him to forfeit the larger income.
Yeah.
And so then he paid me out of the business close to what I was making my full-time job.
That's nice.
Give me 100% of the freelance income, basically, with the trust that I would go do sales and marketing to bring in enough clients to then replace his income. It just kind of made sense to sequence things that way.
That's so symbiotic. I love that concept, which is so nice. And like for my partner and I, it was a situation where I think he took a lot of challenge. Like it was, we don't pay ourselves sometimes. Back when we very first started with our company with Liftoff Asian sponsors, Real Estate First Technology. And so he took, paying cuts, I took pay cuts, and, we had to pay ourselves back over time or whatever, but like it was symbiotic and we both were on the same page. And I love that you guys knew how we're going to navigate the process and how he took care of you, then you took care of him. That's super. How long did it take before you got to a point where you could say, okay, we could replace your income or your salary and you can now go full time?
Yeah, not to replace in the sense of like make as much as you were making.
Yeah.
There is like a lifestyle benefit trade-off of like, would you rather make 30% less, but be fully self-employed and autonomous and all the benefits that kind of come there and the purpose and all those things, especially like in your first year or two as you're transitioning out, it's like, hey, this is a big win.
Yeah.
Like I've got complete flexibility. I'm not making exactly as much as I was yet, but like, hey man, like I'm an entrepreneur now. I'm in control of my own destiny. I work with my friends. This is awesome. I'm like learning skill sets. Like I'm the guy.
Yeah.
It's a very different state of mind. And so we got him to a point where he was comfortable leaving his job on the table. I started in August 22. So we started the business February of 2022, pretty casually. Just like, the initial client kind of came to him free. He didn't seek them out, right? He just like had the skill set. Someone knew he had the skill set, asked him if they would do a project, and then that project turned into a retainer. Got another one of those just kind of on accident.
Yeah.
And then he's like, well, this is pretty cool. I bet if someone was like trying to find clients for me, they'd be able to.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where I came in. And so that was August of 22.
Okay.
And then he came full-time like February or March of 23. So like September, October, November, December, January, February, March, like 6, 7, 8 months-ish.
Nice.
That I was...
That's a good amount of
full time, and he was still not. I mean, we moved in together, right? We're pretty locked in.
Yeah. Wow, dude, that's super cool. And then now it's like you're both doing this together. And I think this thing, anyone who's watching and viewing, listening, is that if you're gonna start your own company, if you're a real estate professional out there, want to go full time with real estate, what have you, like you are trading and it's a mindset shift. You're trading that 9 to 5, working for someone else, like you guaranteed a paycheck, what have you, to then being free and having that control of the work-life balance. When do you want to work? When do you not want to work? I mean, but it's still work, right? Like you have the schedule. You have, okay, you get up at this time, and you have your morning schedule, then you have your work schedule, then you have your meetings, and you have, it's just like a job, if you will, but you have the flexibility and the control to say, I want to do this then, I want to go on this vacation there. I don't have to reach out to HR. I can do as I please. And so for you guys, like, how does that symbiotic relationship like work as far as like just open communication for anyone out there who's video listening that wants to start a company, or maybe they want to go full-time in real estate, and they can take this as an example for maybe something they can think about as they progressively go and get into doing their own thing as well?
Yeah, I think, there's two questions there. One's kind of about our relationship. The other is about some prescriptive advice for people in various situations.
Correct.
As to our relationship, right, we've been friends since we were 10, like best friends pretty much since we were 10. So there's a lot of learning from just knowing a person that long.
Yeah.
And in terms of knowing, being able to kind of predict their behavior and understand if they're being particularly unfriendly on a certain day, if it is caused by you versus if it's external, because you just have a lot of context on their life. So you just help not take things personally versus take things personally versus it helps have that awareness, because then you just, you know what you're dealing with. And that goes both ways, right? That's him for me and me for him.
Wow.
And so tie trust, and when I say been through a lot, not in the sense of like, oh, we've like been through so much, but like just genuinely like we have been together through a lot of different situations.
Yeah.
Which creates information that we can then say, well, this is kind of like, remember that one time where we were doing this and this happened and that happened? And he's like, oh yeah, well, this is kind of like that now. And it's like, that's a good point. And again, that cuts both ways.
I love that.
We at this point now, in terms of, how everything relates, and we're a team of like 15 at the company. So there's quite a few of us. There's a third partner who came into the story at one point, and he's great. And we didn't have as deep of a relationship with him at the outset. So that, had its own set of, I don't want to say challenges, but its own set of like things to learn and move on from. But
of course,
you asked me kind of, there's a prep as I signed up for this and booked myself onto the calendar and all those things. There's some questions just so I come in prepared. And a lot of this, one of them is like the technology that we use. And so we're very big on ClickUp at our company, just for project management software and accountability. And so we have a lot of systems. We use the agile systems, which is like sprints and backlogs and sprint ceremonies and those meetings where you basically commit to the work that you're going to get done over a certain week. So you have like your job, which is like the kind of in the business maintenance work. So like I still do a lot of sales. So like, am I setting my follow-ups? Am I closing at a good rate? That's kind of my job, if you will. Yeah. And then as an owner, I'm like trying to, create new systems and like improve the website and just like push the business to like actually build parts of the house, right? It's like, if it's like a house, for example, there's like adding new rooms to the house and decorating the house. And then there's also just like cleaning the house. Yeah. So I try to, as an owner, do building the house, but obviously it's still early stage. There's a lot of like just cleaning the house and cooking for everybody that still falls on my plate. Yeah. But in terms of managing relationships and expectations, the sprint is basically like, every week we commit, this is what I'm going to get done on the business this week. And usually outside of that, there's really not much expectation of like, we all agree Monday morning, that's a great week. You get all that done. You've made a lot of progress. We're happy. And so that's kind of like the social contract every week, is like, these are the things I think I'm going to be able to get done this week. We honestly only expect 80% from each other, just because things always take slightly longer than you expect. Yeah. You get about 80% of your sprint done that week. If you took some time off, if you took Wednesday off because you want to take Wednesday off, but you got your sprint done, it's like, I love that's our system. And then we kind of do the same thing quarterly.
I love that. And it's really smart too to have, a reference like SOPs, KPIs, standard operating procedures, and really looking at like, what is the week look like? And I like the sprints. I think that's really, really great. We use Hubstaff on our side for our team, and we're a team of 17. So we're very close to the same size as you. Our team is offshore, Philippines. My partner and I, he's in Oregon. I'm here in Arizona, and he's more behind the scenes. So, for our sponsors the show, he's more of like the brand, he's more of the tech, he's more of the KPIs and the structure and the process of the business itself behind the scenes. And I'm like, on your side, I'm more of like the sales, I'm more the visionary, the front end guy, and really forecasting and like coming up with these campaigns, like the landing page I showed you, as we're going to bring in some agents on the startup website only side. But I like that. I like how you set the tone on Monday for those sprints, and this is kind of selfish on my side, I guess you could say, selfishly on my side, just because, like, as business owners, there's things we can learn from one another. Always. And so what you're telling me is like, okay, cool. Maybe there's something that could be applicable to our organization that I can implement and say, hey, Smith, check this out, or hey, you got to watch this podcast, right?
Yeah.
And that's even for real estate agents, because a lot of agents out there don't have marketing degrees, don't have business degrees. They take spaghetti, to throw it at the wall and see what sticks. And our mission, as far as the sponsor of the show, is to innovate this industry and set an industry standard and really help them really be able to think about SOPs, KPIs, and what is their avatar? Like, what does their company look like? And do they want to have sprints like we're talking about, right? Do they want to have their own, eventually, maybe a team underneath them so they can just do as they wish and maybe delegate the things that they don't want to do? So when you were scaling and growing your company, now getting to the point where you're at 15, like, did you start to think to yourself, like, okay, I like these activities, I don't like these activities, so stop less working in the business, more working on the business, and then scale out like the actual work itself to your team and staff and start hiring for those positions that maybe you're like, that's not something that I want to focus my attention on? Or how did you navigate that process?
Yeah, I'd say I have potentially contrarian, definitely utilitarian views on that conversation. Like, it's not really relevant what I enjoy doing.
What
I mean?
I like that. Okay.
It's, we have hobbies, we have relationships, we have business. It's like, not, if you ask for everything out of one thing, it's kind of asking for too much. You know what I mean?
Okay.
It's like people I like playing pickleball, right? I like playing pickleball. I like playing ping pong.
Okay.
If suddenly that's what my income depended on, I may not like it anymore. Right? It's like, this business is my career.
Yeah.
It's also my passion. It's also my hobby in some respects.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it is like, I'm doing this because it's my career. This is how I plan to make an income.
Yeah.
I enjoy it. I think that it's important that what we do helps people, both our employees and externally. Obviously, we don't have a business. We don't make any money if we're not providing value and helping people, right? We're just going to go out of business if we're not providing value and helping people. That's a given, for the fact that to make money, you have to provide value and help people.
Yeah.
But this isn't like hobbies. Like, if I want to have fun, I should go do something fun. Right? It's like, the work is, I got to do what I got to do to make the things happen.
Yeah.
And so whether or not I enjoy it's like not the biggest factor. I do have like a deep intellectual, like romantic interest in the theory of marketing and sales. Like, I think they're fascinating topics, and I enjoy it, and I enjoy copywriting, and I like the English language, and like helping people, my writers, with word choice, and like, helping them. AI made a draft of something for a project the other day, and the word was like, in this interview, he revealed, it was a testimonial.
Okay.
It was a testimonial that we put on our YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And we had AI kind of summarized it.
Okay.
And writes like, in this interview, he reveals why he started working with orbit marketing. I'm like, that's not a word that a human would have ever chosen
ever
to describe how a customer speaks about. There's no reveal here, right? It's like, it's not a secret. Like, we discussed that. Like,
exactly.
we discussed in this conversation why he chose to work with us, but it's not like he revealed the secret strategy of how email It's like, no, it's an obvious thing that everyone should be doing. And in this video, he just said, Orbit Marketing, my business, is a good vendor. They're reliable. They do good quality work. But there's no big reveal here. Like, that just and so I enjoy like the game. I like the work that we're doing.
Yeah.
But the point of the business is to be a healthy, successful business. And a lot of like your success is limited by your tolerance for doing boring, monotonous things inside of the business.
Yeah.
And ideally, like, I would love to be a writer. Like, if I could build a business and all I had to do was, like, I just described how much I like picking words. Like, that's what writing is picking words.
Exactly.
If that's what was going to make us a lot of money, I would love to do it. But I loved writing. And that's like a lot of why this business worked so well for me, is like, for the first 5-6 months, I wrote half the newsletters with my other business partner.
Wow.
Before we brought any writers in. And I didn't mind it because it's fun and I like writing.
Yeah.
But that's not going to get us more customers. And so it's pragmatic and utilitarian in the sense of like, look, if I can take someone who earns $20 an hour and have them do this task for me, I should stop doing it.
Yeah.
If I can take, because I don't know exactly what my effective hourly rate is, but I can think about how much MRR I added to the business in the past year with my job duties, and I can annualize that. And then I can, divide that by, what am I thinking here? Divide that by, I forget the division here. Let's say you make $100 an hour. That's about $200K a year.
Yep.
So whatever the math is, I can work myself backwards into what my approximate hourly value, an hour of my best time, what is that worth on average to the business?
Yeah.
And if a task can be done by somebody for a lot less than that. I shouldn't do it whether or not I enjoy it or not. Obviously, if I love it so much, it fills me with so much energy, then like, yeah, keep doing it. But I got to limit that to like 5 to 10% of my week. Otherwise, I got to go do the stuff that needs to be done. It's like the second something's easy, it means that it's easy because I understand it. And if I understand it, I should go through the process of teaching someone else how to do it. And so that's what I mean by like utilitarian and practical. And then kind of another aspect of this is, an author I've been really fond of for a long time is Cal Newport. And that's a lot of like why I was very much offline in social media in college. His books kind of like, listen, man, like if you want to be a good academic, like don't use these things. It's poison. And, I agreed with him, fortunately, at the time. And kept my brain. I was a machine. I made good grades and I could focus for hours on end, and it was great. And a lot of what he writes in one of his books called So Good They Can't Ignore You. Is basically that the kind of like your passion thing is kind of a myth. It's like people don't like being bad at things, and people like being good at things. And so all of a sudden when you're really good at something, it becomes very fun. And then all of a sudden you're passionate about it. So it's like it's like, yeah, you could be like closed-minded and just think of like your current skill set and your current level of skill. And say, well, I'm already good at those things, therefore those are my passions. It's like, no, like I hate this because I'm not good at it, and it sucks to feel incompetent. It's just a very unpleasant feeling to like go somewhere and be bad at something.
100%.
Really is unpleasant. But then get good at it, and all of a sudden it's super interesting and you're passionate about it. And so that's kind of how I think of like the valuable work that needs to be done. Like we're really, we've gotten this far with effectively. I mean, I don't think effectively. Let's say no ad spend. Maybe we spent like 500. Like maybe we've like paid a guy to like I paid someone to do a small thing or something. But like we haven't launched a Facebook ad. We haven't launched like maybe we did like $500 a seat. Like no ad spend.
Just organic growth. I love it.
All organic growth.
Right. 100%.
We got to move on from that. Like we got to start buying ads because we want to grow faster. We've got the budget for it. We got to start buying ads, and like that's a whole new domain to learn. Like I'm not passionate about it. I'm not good at it. I haven't done it before. But like that's where our next growth unlock's going to come from, because I got writers and they can handle a lot more work. Like we could onboard 6 new customers a week, and so I need to go find those 6 customers a week, and it's pretty hard to like go with outbound sales and get that many just with the close rate. So I'm like, let's buy ads, see if we can get appointments on the calendar at a profitable rate. And it's going to suck because I'm going to be unfamiliar. I'm going to feel like I'm losing money. But like that's what needs to be done. So that's my next project.
Dude, I'm right there with you, and that's awesome. I got to say that I love the thought process and the perspective that you put out there. That like you just got to look at specifically your time, what it's worth, the activity, and can it be scaled? Can it be delegated? And is it at a point where you can teach it because you're so good at it? And so you still have a percentage that you do like writing, so you can have fun with that and have that as well, but your main focus is income producing activities, which is awesome. And so for me, in contrast to, and someone maybe can relate to this, is like, we'll go deeper in like just a little bit of my past. I was diagnosed with a learning disability, held back in 3rd grade, had tubes in my ears, fluid. And so I was held back. And so for me, reading and writing isn't my thing. And so having people around me and I'm the opposite of you, that can help with the writing and proofreading. And thank God with AI and ChatGPT and everything else and Google, like smartphones, like, you know what I'm saying? It's almost like non-existence anymore, because now I could just like talk on the phone, get what I need. It's fine. But yeah, I went in that direction of like, okay, cool. Like I need to find a partner, someone that can help with those processes where it's like, hey, I'm not good with the tech and the websites and the UI, UX and all that type of stuff. What my partner's good at, he used to work at Google. And for me, I'm like a visionary guy, and I can speak and talk and all the things, and I can present well. So that was my thing. And so I always thought to myself, hey, I'm just going to delegate the things that I don't really enjoy, which actually now equating what you just said was lower income activities that I could delegate to someone else, said, person who could be writing the emails or whatever the case may be. So I don't know. I just wanted a little side segment there. As we transition into more of like the tech, right? The tech in your business, and, we'll love to learn a little bit about the tech, which you've already talked a little bit about, the management software, and then get into some strategy when it comes into email marketing and cadences and approaches that people should be taking. I will say that I'm excited for this segment as well, because email marketing hasn't been something we really pushed on as much as we've had in the past couple of years. And so now we're going deeper at it, and it's been effective, and it's been something that we are pushing and growing on. And this is your wheelhouse, man. So let's dive into, first off, a little bit of the tech, and then we'll get into email strategy campaigns. So when you think about growing and scaling a business, what are some good tech, some good tools, some things for people to think about as you scale that can help with automation and scaling of your business to be able to help with just management software, what have you?
Yeah, I can speak generally. Again, I would say sometimes utilitarian, almost to a fault, right? It's like what every business is. And this, I'm not the first guy who's like made this statement, right? It's like you sell something and you fulfill something.
Yeah.
And don't worry about automating anything until you know that you're selling something.
I love it.
Right. It's like, don't worry about any of this. Like, do you have something people want to buy?
Yep.
And then do you know how to give it to them? Right. And then all you continue to do is in those two hemispheres of the business, get better at those two things.
Yeah.
Right. Get better at selling it. And what does get better at selling it? It means make more people aware of what you do, or find the people who are already aware and just convert at a better rate, or sell it for more money. Right. Yep. And then fulfill it is like get faster, do it better, charge more for it, or sell it, find additional things to fulfill. Yeah. That's really all there is to it. It's just like you have sales and you have fulfillment.
Yep.
And then when you start kind of problem first, which is like, okay, so now my problem is that I'm not able to email enough people. Okay, what technology should we use to email more people? Or my problem, because I've established that I'm really good at selling this product using email. Okay, how do I email more people, or how do I do that thing more effectively? But it's not like you start there, not just like,
I like that.
What technology is interesting, because that's just like fun, right? That's just like kind of looking for like, and I'm not hating on the question at all. I'm just saying, like,
yeah, totally fine.
Because once I actually like, I have a bunch of technology that I'm excited to talk about. I'm just saying, like, if someone is new in business, for them, this is the premature conversation. It's like you get to earn the ability to like have these conversations and have them actually be productive for you.
Yes.
You know, we were talking earlier about like Rome Research, which was a note-taking software, and Notion and Webflow. Correct. And like, what's the best website? And like, the best website is like, do you have something people want to buy? Like, I don't care about your website. Like, do you have something people want to buy?
Yeah.
And are you capable of delivering it? That's it. Then it's like, okay, then you can have a website later.
I love that though, really quick, just because a lot of individuals, like real estate professionals, like they will take spaghetti and throw at the wall to see what sticks because they're excited about the tech, not understanding, like you said, first, they need to understand who are they, like for them, it's an avatar. Like who are you selling? Is it a buyer? Is it a seller? What are their pain points? Why are they looking to buy or sell? And then you're selling yourself, right? Like you are selling you, and then they have to know, like, trust you from content, email marketing, what have you. And then from there, I love where you're taking this. I just wanted a quick segue because I just want to relate to our viewers and listeners out there that are going to be real estate professionals, mortgage professionals, title companies, and maybe even small business owners out there that are going to be like, oh, wow. You know, he's right. I need to earn the right to be able to use the tech that's going to help me be more efficient. So go ahead, keep going.
Earn the right to care about like what tech, because it even matters. You know, I'm someone who like, I think a lot of like the point of religion is just to help us remember important things, because humans are just prone to forgetting important things.
Yes.
And so like I have a daily meeting with my assistant, and every day on that meeting, we're like, why did I remember why I like remind her at the beginning of the meeting, here's why I hired you. Like, we're here for this reason.
I love that.
And that is, your job is to help me get the most sprint points as possible.
Yes.
Right. My job is I talked about the sprints.
Yep.
And this is what I committed to getting done every week. Your job is to make sure that I actually hit those numbers.
Correct.
So if that means checking my email for me, if that means doing some of the things for me, if that means canceling meetings so I don't like go waste time on things, or like, you are here to help me make sure that I hit my sprint. That is your job. That is why we're here. And like, she knows that, but like, I'm so distraction prone. Wow. And so I start every meeting. We have an agenda, right? Because we don't just get on the phone and start talking. We get on the phone and we pull up the meeting agenda, which is like a pre-made document.
Yep.
And on that document, we start with, okay, you're here, and there's 5 primary ways that I think you're going to help me do that, right? Managing my admin, helping me with project management, and then like 3 other things. So we go through that every single day. It's like the Pledge of Allegiance.
I love that.
Right? Because otherwise we just don't get to it.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to remember like exactly where I was going with this, and like, so religion is kind of like the other aspect. Like, religion's kind of the same thing. Like, that's the point of like the holidays, is like, so like the Jews, they do Passover every year to like remind them that you were slaves in Egypt before you're freed. And like, that's like an important thing to remember. It's like, hey man, like life might be bad, but like historically your people were slaves, and like you're not slaves anymore. So like maybe you can be in a good mood because like you're not slaves anymore at least. And like that's like a powerful lesson to like think about.
I love that. I love that. Just keep it simple.
Exactly. And so in terms of the technology, it's all about like, what is the problem that we're solving? And so what I was getting at with the Rome Research, like these productivity tools, like they're all fun and they're fun to talk about. But you have to like understand, it's like starting your search, and it is useful to like, in terms of like where good ideas come from, like you just have to have interesting information in your head and just like doing some perusing just for the sake of like, this is interesting and I want to know about it.
Yeah.
Because that's got to put it in your head to think of something you would have not thought of, because we don't always solve problems linearly. We don't always say, okay, I've decided I want to make my stuff more efficient, therefore what tool should I use? And then I'm gonna use, like, you might just not know about a certain tool that doesn't exist. And so you have to, like, these conversations are productive. And I will say what I was saying about being utilitarian to a fault, because I liked what you said about selling your, like, as agents specifically when you are selling yourself.
Yeah.
So in that situation, what are the aspects of selling yourself? There's a lot of like what makes someone know, like, and trust you.
Correct.
Right. And so trusting you is going to come from your perceived professionalism. So things like having, let's say if it's an in-person interaction, especially with an older kind of clientele, I think a business card still goes a long way, having a professional business card.
Yeah.
Obviously the way you look and the way you dress and the way you present yourself, that obviously matters quite a bit. And then having a website does matter in terms of presenting yourself professionally as well. So like, and that matters as well. And then the actual copy of the website, speaking to, like you said, having an avatar, that's going to matter a lot. Like, does the copy say, I help real estate investors who live out of state buy property sight unseen because they trust me so much? Or does it say, I help people buy houses anywhere at any time, right? One person is going to resonate with that message and one person's not. And you have to have the confidence to be like, I know who I'm selling to, so I'm going to write the more specific message. And that's the specificity of that. And so I just don't care if you choose Webflow, if you use WordPress, like that's just the last, I'm the guy who just like, I mean, Webflow is great. Webflow is really great. I like Webflow a lot. But like you can use, like, you could put up a damn Google Doc, and if the words are the right words, again, the Google Doc's probably not going to appeal to an older person, but like sometimes it does. Like you see Agora and some of these websites where people just buy, what is look up the Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett's website. It's like, and again, there's a lot of pieces here, right? He gets away with it because he has the credibility of being Warren Buffett. And so now it's almost like mythical that his website's so bad. It's like as to like the lore of Warren Buffett, and like everyone knows who he is, so it doesn't matter that his website's bad, whereas no one knows who you are, therefore it matters that your website's like, there's a give and take on all of this. But just not getting fixated on the pieces and losing the big picture is just such a big priority for me.
Agreed.
I will say, in terms of technology, just to give some pieces of this and not avoid the question completely, like ClickUp is certainly our lifeblood as far as our document organization, our task organization, right? You can create a task and assign it to anyone else, and you have your views. I'm seeing what tasks are assigned to you and the estimates. And there's a lot of like, because we have that data model, we can do a lot of reporting. We track everyone, use Hubstaff. We're probably going to start using Hubstaff for some of our overseas employees just for the added layer of accountability. But even for domestic employees, everyone has to time track every task, including myself at the executive level or at the administrative level. We all track every task that we do. So people can have visibility into like whose time is going where. Even people who aren't paid hourly, we still want them to track their time, and just to have that level of consciousness, so I can look back at the end of the week and be like, where did my time go? Well, I spent 3 hours on this, 2 hours on this. Was that worthwhile? What should I? And so I can look back on the year and say, okay, I've spent 2,000 hours working this year, which is about what I have tracked in ClickUp, right? We're about 50 weeks into the year, put in about 40 hours a week on average. I don't always track everything perfectly.
Wow.
But if like 300 of those hours went to like email, calendar, Slack, then I'm like, that's too much time for email, calendar, Slack. Like imagine 300 extra podcasts, or like 300 extra hours of sleep, or like, I don't know, just like it's just anything but email, calendar, Slack. And so you see these patterns emerge. So like having universal task-based time tracking, and just like the way all the backlinks work. But this is like, this is ops. Maybe I sort of enjoy the ops conversation, but I'm like, I'll enjoy the ops conversation when it feels like the bottleneck. And some of it does feel like the bottleneck. So like, for example, like I love when things cascade, when things are templated, and like when things cascade. And so that's why, again, there's all these kind of points that interconnect. But like Roam Research is this note-taking app that's like a network where every note can backlink to every other note kind of automatically. And if you put anything in brackets, it creates its own note, so you can see everywhere else. It's linked everywhere else in the database. So like, for example, I could make an entry for you and put your name, and we, carry on a relationship over a series of years, and I have a journal. And so I see every time I mentioned you in a journal entry, like I'm like, oh, I had the podcast with Norman today. And then I meet someone else, and then I write in there, oh, that would be an interesting person to connect with, Norman. And so that person's name is the hyperlink, and your name's the hyperlink.
Love
and
that.
I go to your page, and I see all the things that have ever referenced your name. It's like you are an object in this database that has like interactivity with other objects. And so, or there's a book, right? Let's say the conversion code, like I read that book and I just like make a note that you like it. And so then it's a gift idea. And then it just keeps information categorized in an interesting way.
Very smart.
And so like that's a piece of software. We don't use that at the company, but so one thing I do, for example, like we use Go High Level as our CRM, which is, pretty common, but finding links in there is just such a nightmare.
Really?
I think so. It just kind of loads slow to like hit calendar, then appointments, then appointment settings, then find the right appointment. Doesn't show it's annoying.
Yeah.
And so I just like copied all of those links outside of High Level into my own personal Roam research. So I have a note that's like handy links. And I also made all of those objects. Like it's my own searchable database of external links that I just can find more. So like when I'm on a sales call and they want to buy this product or put the deposit down for this or book this onboarding call, it takes me you want to be fast on a sales call so you can close them on the call and find the right thing. So I just saved all those links and categorized them inside of my own database in Roam research. So they're like, I'm ready to move forward with this. I type in like deposit newsletter and then I find the right link. But then if I change that, I could then in like a bunch of links, like I could have a script, but I like when you can change something in one place, then automatically updates in all the right other places is what I'm getting at when I say something cascades.
I like that.
So for my writers, I think it's very important as a writer to read everything out loud to yourself before you publish it. Because that's how you hear things like, wait, Jesse reveals why he worked with Hormone Marketing. That doesn't make any sense. Like you read it and like it reads fine. Like that verb does make sense. Like people do reveal information sometimes.
Yeah.
It's not like a typo, but it's like a strange choice. And you wouldn't have maybe heard that because you skim or like Jesse discovered how he discovered how he discovered us. Like it's no. But like you don't go through that slowly unless you read something aloud. So there's a quality checklist that all the writers have to like press yes before sending anything to a client. And so maybe we swap from Grammarly to like everyone goes Grammarly. You put something through Grammarly.
Yep.
Maybe there's a new AI Grammarly that's better. And so I suddenly want to update the checklist. And so you like update the template in one place. And now from then on, every writer from that point in time, like the checklist is just updated everywhere.
Yeah.
So stuff like that is certainly nice. So like, but there's a lot of like nerdy automation stuff that we like to do.
Yeah.
Like I got a lot of these. Like there's a tool I use called Readwise. This is like business and personal, but there's not a fine line between them.
Yeah.
Or when I say personal, like just personal development, maybe like I was just learning about something independently and I'm going to apply those ideas to the business.
Yep.
Right. I mean, I love Instant Data Scraper. That's probably my favorite Chrome extension of all time.
Wow. I have to check that out.
Instant data. If there's like one life-changing thing, it's Instant Data Scraper, man. That's some good technology right there. You can write that down. Like scraping websites is such a nightmare.
Yeah.
It's really not actually. But people make it a nightmare. You download the HTML, then use like Python and Beautiful Soup, and like people go crazy with it.
Yeah.
But Instant Data Scraper, like their icon looks like a Pokeball, like from Pokemon. And so you click that, and it just takes all the data from the page that's visible in like a super great format.
Wow.
And a lot of like what building lead lists is. Every business that sells something, you got to build a list of people to sell it to.
Yeah.
And it's just sometimes a nightmare to like extract all the data from the page in a structured way. So Instant Data Scraper helps you with that. Like
Instant Data.
It even works on like, and I don't know like who's listening to this or who am I getting in trouble with, but it even works on like Google.com.
Really?
So like that's what like I actually maybe like some of the reason I have like such this strong aversion to like making the conversation about tech is because like I'm a total like I studied computer science, right? It's like I'm obviously into this stuff.
Obviously.
And I'm expressing that like being into it. Like there was a period of time when I first started working with Sean on this business where I was like trying to get the CRM set up in Airtable. I was using Lemlist for bulk cold outreach. And I set up this Lemlist had an API. So it was like, this is before ChatGPT. So like I was actually writing code with my brain.
Wow.
And I was like, well, I connected to the Lemlist API and I fed all the data to this Airtable and I had all the leads sorted by who most recently opened an email, but like also ranked by the most clicks.
Yeah.
And it took me like, I spent so much time building this thing. It was pretty cool. But I'm like, if all the time I spent building that should have just been like more like caveman make cold call, caveman knock on door. Like I'm like, because like I'm like I would have gotten more business if I just like cold called or knocked on doors rather than like building all this stuff. So there's a time and a place when it's like, okay, now I have 6 full-time writers. They're not me. They don't have the same background I had. They didn't work for these other companies. They weren't traditional agents. They're just like fresh out of college, made good grades, smart people.
Yeah.
But they don't have the experience I've had. How do I enforce my ideologies onto them in terms of like their work reflecting that output? Suddenly it actually is a high leverage thing to use the right tool. But at the beginning, it's like, we don't need that. We need customers who are paying us and we need them to tell us that we write good newsletters. And then now that I have to write 50, 60 a week with 6 like fairly fresh talent.
Yeah.
Again, they're great employees. Just a lot of them don't have a fresh, at least to this problem space. Like they weren't writing newsletters. Like we taught them how to write newsletters.
Yep.
How do I make sure they're really good at it? Okay, well, here's a way that technology can help me scale this important thing that's already established. That's when the conversation starts to matter.
I love that, man. And for anyone who's viewing and listening out there, a lot of this I can just imagine went like straight over your head. But for the top 10% of business or top 10% of real estate professionals that has 90% of the business in the real estate industry, in the sector, they understand this tech and they understand everything from data scrub to then thinking about like, hey, Grammarly for your, say, checking your grammar, what you're writing, and, Chat GPT, whatever the case may be, and going deeper with the process and the different systems and the tools that they could use to maximize opportunities. It's just a lot of agents out there. They are the caveman kind of, hey, knock on door, make phone call, keep it simple. And that's where Liftoff Agent, our sponsor, comes into play to say, hey, let's take the tech and put it and infuse it into your day-to-day networking, making phone calls, door knocking,
I just think young people try to skip that step, the caveman step. And if you skip the caveman step, you've missed some important lessons.
Oh, 100%. There needs to be a good yin and yang. You gotta go do the caveman. You gotta go make the calls, door knock, make it happen, go network, and then come back. And I was talking to my wife about this because she's scaling her her tea company. And I'm like, you got to get everything on a tablet or a phone. So when you have check-ins, they go on the tablet, they check in, and then she wants to do like a giveaway for tea tasting. I was like, okay, cool. Then they put the information in. It goes through like a random selector, and then you select a giveaway person, and then that goes into your email campaign. It goes into your text campaign. It goes into all your various CRM system. And so that way everything can, and she's like, well, this, that, and that. I said, no. I said, you need to do this because you're one person and you're scaling, just like a lot of these agents out there. Like they need to think about this stuff so they can scale and grow. So as we get closer to the end of the show, let's give them some good hot takes on specific things that they could be doing in whether it's like writing email campaigns, what's the most effective campaigns, scheduling, how often should they send out campaigns, and then of course all the links are going to be down below. So if you're looking to hire an amazing company, then you might just want to hire this amazing company over here, and you're getting behind the scenes. Like I'm a car guy, so like open the hood here, and we're meeting one of the owners, right? That's and right. Understanding, the nuances and your passions, which is, I think, way more effective in 2024 going 2025, is that a lot of stuff is just kind of cold. You go on the website, you see the case studies, you see the testimonials, you see what you guys do, but you build no like trust, right? When you're meeting someone over a demo, strategy call, whatever. So what are some takeaways for our guests today?
I sent some unhinged looms, and like they hit like 1 out of.
I love loom, bro.
I sent such an unhinged loom last night. Like I was on a rant, and it was so unhinged, and I don't know if he's responded yet, but he might. I was just making this, like, again, a lot of this stuff's fresh in memory, but I was doing this tool. This is not how we connected, right? We connected in person at an event, but there's a tool I'm using to pitch myself as a guest on podcasts, right? It's a great way to like get exposure. I can show it to you.
Yeah, for sure.
I can give them a shout. It's called Pod Pitch.
Yeah.
And it just builds a great database of like relevant shows and uses AI to help write copy of why you'd be a great guest and personalize the message, all that.
Love it.
But I'm like, well, yeah, like I can pitch myself as a guest on these podcasts. But these podcasters make a great potential customer for me. So let me use the same lead list and give it to my sales team. And I was like going through the list using Instant Data Scraper. And then like, look, here's this guy right here. And I was like, this podcast was like 10,000 downloads a month. I look it up. It's a marketing agency, local SEO for law firms. Dude's making a podcast, got 50 employees, has a blog, no newsletter.
Ooh.
And I'm just pissed at this point. I'm just like, all right, hold up.
How are you missing this piece, dude?
And so I just like make a Loom video, and I just like get on the camera. I send him a LinkedIn connection. I'm like, hey, bro, I don't know if I said hey, bro, but I was like, hey, man, found your podcast, saw the recent episode with this guy about building a powerful practice, thought it was interesting. Anyway, just really confused why I don't have a newsletter. Like, I'm just like genuinely like, I'm at a loss. Like, why don't you have a newsletter?
What's going on here?
And he responds or like accepts the connection. And so then I'm like, all right, he accepted the connection. I'm gonna record a video for him. And I'm like, listen, dude, like it's 10 o'clock at night. I was using the software for this other thing, but then I saw your thing and I was like, out of curiosity, does this guy have a newsletter? Because he probably does. Then I looked and I saw you didn't. And I'm like, what the hell? What's going on here? Like, I'm not even trying to sell you anything. It just like makes so much sense for you to have one. And then I'm just like, I don't understand it. And so anyway, like if you want to talk about it, let me know. But otherwise, like I just like had to send you this video. Like that was a real like emotional. It wasn't just like me following a script of like, all right, I looked up 50 websites for my ICP and then I sent them all video. Like, I was just like, what? I was just like at a loss.
You're passionate.
So I was just being a real person, like just being super genuine. And that makes a big difference. But like that also has to be that you can't fake that. Like it was triggered. Like I just like randomly entered that state last night. Um, but to the question of some advice, I feel like, we wanted to get into email marketing and I just kept going on rambling tangents about other things.
We're leaving it. We got to keep them going until they get to the end. And then they're like, all right, yes, this is what I've been waiting for the whole time.
Yep. And I mean, it's going to be the same thing. It's going to be the same philosophy of, so when I worked for Pomp, he was on this podcast. I forget who he was being interviewed by, but we can all agree it was someone big for sure. I don't know, but it was definitely important.
Yeah.
And he was like, how much Bitcoin should I buy? How much Bitcoin should I tell my parents to buy? That's a big question. It's like, we all know, like, it's exciting. It feels like the future, but like, we don't want to tell people to invest and they're going to lose money. So like, it's tough. He's like, look, we can all agree the right amount for them to buy isn't zero. Like zero is the wrong amount.
Yep.
Everyone, like, you're interested in it. I don't know if it's $1, if it's $100, if it's 1,000, if it's 10,000. But the answer is not zero. You're interested in it, get some. Just, that you shouldn't have zero. So let's go get $1 worth, go get $10 worth, whatever's like trivial to a cup of coffee, a meal's worth, a date night's worth, like a paycheck's worth, whatever, some amount. And now you're in it. And then you can learn more from there. And so that's kind of been my philosophy with this business is every business should send some form of email, should have some presence over email.
Yes.
We all know that sending no email is the wrong strategy.
Yes.
And that's my starting point for a lot of people.
Okay.
And then from there, I typically think weekly is the best.
Okay.
Right. If ever another part of like maturing in business, if you will, is like being okay to polarize people. I think it's like, I don't know if it's a Jay Abrahams quote or who it's from, but like if you're the quotes that if you haven't offended someone by noon each day, then you're not a marketer, or that's like, I'm kind of paraphrasing.
Reminds me of Grant Cardone,
exactly.
omnipresence.
It's like if you haven't annoyed someone, if you haven't pissed someone off by noon every day, then you're not like actually marketing.
Yeah.
It's okay to like piss people off. It's okay to polarize people. It's okay to go too hard. People just stop. They unfollow you, and if they unfollow you, it's because they weren't going to buy.
Yep.
If they're interested, they're interested. And there's a point of like you can alienate good customers by like overdoing things and doing things incorrectly.
Yeah.
But for the most part, the people who are interested are interested. So I think about anytime I've unsubscribed from a newsletter, it's because I'm no longer interested in that thing, right? It's like I'm just not like I was interested in, let's you have this cat right here. It's like how to get a cat and there's like a newsletter that teaches you how to potty train your cat.
Oh,
maybe, right?
I don't know. I'll read it.
But your cat's potty trained. You don't have the problem anymore. You unsubscribe from the newsletter. The person sending that newsletter. So same thing. This is super relevant for real estate. Super, super, super relevant. People take unsubscribes so personally. It's like if the people who unsubscribe from your newsletter are first-time home buyers, they bought a house. They don't need to read your shit anymore. It's like
no.
It's not because you suck. It's not because your email's bad. It's because like they bought a house.
Yeah.
And so they don't need your stuff anymore.
The other unsubscribe that I will say that it's a little frustrating is when they're customers and you're adding value.
Yep.
And then they unsubscribe. You're like, okay, you're still paying me, but sure.
Well, that's one of the things I say very frequently, because a lot of people, you have a podcast. I'm sure people ask you all the time advice about, should I start a podcast? Blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And part of what I say to people who are about it is like, listen, like part of the mindset you have to have is that you're not suddenly going to turn like if you have a friend or your mom or your cousin doesn't listen to podcasts, they're not going to start listening to podcasts just because you made one.
Exactly.
Right? So like
they will not.
Some people just don't like to read emails. Like there's a big percentage of the market just doesn't like to read emails. Like they like you, they want to buy a house from you, they just don't want to read your emails. And that's just again also part of like the marketing thing. It's just like you're not for everybody.
Yeah.
You're not going to make $1 trillion. There's the people you serve and there's the people who don't want it, and that's okay. But get off zero is what I say.
Okay.
And then my quick frame of the point of email marketing. Again, it's everything. I try to focus on the fundamentals.
Yeah.
And like I say that with like no arrogance or no like, let's just go with arrogance. Like there's nothing like I mean by like, oh, I'm so smart for saying this. It's just like genuinely bad things happen when you lose sight of the fundamentals, and I don't want bad things to happen. Keeping it simple, right? Simple scales, complex fails. Great slogan. I didn't come up with it. I've just heard it a bunch of times, and it sticks because it's a simple slogan.
Yeah.
Email marketing? The two words are email and marketing, right? What's the point of marketing? The point of marketing is to get people who are interested in your stuff to buy your stuff.
Yep.
How does that happen? You take them through the buyer's journey. Right? What is the buyer's journey? There's problem awareness, solution awareness, and then like vendor selection, and then just miscellaneous like objections and confusions, right? Yep. That's the whole journey.
Yep.
They need to have a problem. I want to buy a house. They need to believe that the solution makes sense. So, realtors are like, and again, this is my general framework. It maps much better to certain things than others, but in general, like you can apply kind of any purchasing journey to this. I'll share mine, for example. So a potential customer for me, they want more leads. They're frustrated. Their business isn't growing fast enough. That's their problem. The solution is like they need to believe email marketing is a real thing, right? Email's not dead. Email's still a valid channel. People still read emails. Email's a real thing.
Yeah.
Email works. Then step 3 is, okay, I shouldn't do this myself. It's hard. It takes a lot of time. I hate writing. I didn't do good in school. Like this I'm not going to be consistent. I have too much else to do, whatever. And then number 4 is the vendor. Lewis, Orbit Marketing, they're the best ones to do that for me, right? Here's their case studies. Here's their credibility. Here's this podcast he was on. This is the know, like, and trust. Like all 3 aspects. Like they're familiar with you. They like you and so sometimes you make them like you just by doing something fun and friendly, whether or not it has anything to do with your subject matter, just being likable.
Yep.
And then trust is, again, like the case studies, the testimonials, whatever. And then the 5th is just like the confusion. Like we're just not confused.
Yep.
And so when I'm giving someone an email marketing strategy, it's like, well, what are we doing? We're doing marketing, and we're just doing the marketing over email. So all we're doing is just working on building those series of beliefs along the buyer's journey with emails.
Yep.
And if maybe you have some opinion as to like what's the weakest, like maybe since you're a young agent or you have no experience, maybe you really want to like, what's the main. So that's one thing. We turn the buyer's journey into your email strategy. And the other thing, and kind of like a slogan that we use, is we turn objections into subject lines, right? It's that simple.
I love that.
So you go have a meeting with someone, they're so interested in buying from you, so interested in like, I don't know, all this real estate terminology, making you their listing agent, making you their person. Like they're ready to get married to you in the real estate sense. And then they don't.
Yep.
Why? What happened? What went wrong? Let's now write an essay for the other thing. So for me, for example, I sell a service. The service costs money. Sometimes people think it's too expensive. That happens anytime you sell anything. So then I get off the phone with someone. They're ready to buy. They think I'm great. They think I'm going to write great content.
Yeah.
They're just not ready to spend the money. So maybe the next week I write an email that's like, why email marketing is worth the investment, or how you're going to see an ROI from email marketing. And then I'm going to write a blog post / direct response persuasive email explaining, with email marketing, you have this many people on a list, you expect this many people to convert in over a 12-month cycle, and this, and this, and that's why you should expect to make $3 for every dollar invested. Suddenly, someone's going to read that on my list, and that person who's read that is going to, when they come on a call with me, if they have any objections, it's not going to be that one because I've already walked them through it. I've already shown them with irrefutable proof that they're wrong and I'm right. And so just every objection that you face, people, you're too young, you don't have enough experience.
I love this.
You just turn those objections into subject lines.
I love this.
So I think once a week's a great cadence to aim for. And then in terms of what to talk about, just what is the customer journey? Where are people dropping off? And how can we write the opposite belief in their mind?
And a perfect subject line would be, why to buy a house now with high interest rates? Like that's like the first thing that came to my mind, because that's a rebuttal, and like the housing market right now is just really slow.
100%. That's in my mind right now. I don't want to buy a house. Interest rates are too high.
Yeah.
Like that's the first reason someone talks to me like, we should buy a house. I'm like, no, it's too. No. Like, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Let me know. I don't know real estate. There's a lot of stuff I don't know. Maybe like, refinance. I've never heard that word before. I don't know. And so it's like, educate them.
Yeah.
And now suddenly, guess what happens? You've taught them something they don't know. They go, oh, this person knows stuff I don't know. They might be the expert here.
I love that. Get clear. The rebuttals are going to be the subject line. I love that. And then really think about the copy, what you're adding of value. And for agents, we tell them all the time, especially if you're going to be like a area expert, like talk about the schools, the parks, the restaurants, the local news. What the fuck's going on? New restaurant. You like Italian food? Down the street. Whatever else. Man, this has been freaking phenomenal, man. And I'm loving the end of the show right now, because now it's like really getting juicy for our listeners and viewers out there to be like, oh, okay. And I hope you guys are adding value for you. And if you are seeing value here, like, subscribe, notification bell, shout out Liftoff for the sponsor. And dude, shout out to this gentleman, man. This has been awesome. And as we close out on Real Estate First Technology, we like to just one golden nugget. If there's something like a golden nugget or a quote or something that you want to leave our viewers and listeners, is there one thing that you would want to say that maybe, I don't know, something that, that you went through, came up for you, that you went over, that something that you just, rise above, a quote that you loved? Is there anything that comes to mind? You can just right there in that camera. What do you want to leave our viewers and listeners as we close out our show today?
Yeah, I'm glad you gave me this one in advance so I could have something prepped for it.
Right.
I think it's kind of a combination of a few different statements. So something like Andy Elliott likes to say all the time is, it's going to be harder than you think. It's going to be more expensive. It's going to take longer than you think. And that's kind of true of everything, right? Like getting in shape takes It's harder, takes longer, more expensive, whatever. Building a business, like all these worthwhile things, harder, more effort, etc. So I think that part of why we've been successful, I just mentioned, right? My time tracker says 2,000 hours this year, 50 weeks in. We're on week 49 of the year. Like your calendar, you can turn it on.
Impressive.
To press the week number.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, like I'm working like an average pace. Like it's just sustainable. And so it's like nothing's going to happen overnight. And so you need to be able to go for a long time. And the way that you're able to go for a long time is to pick a sustainable pace. And so my business partner and I, we expect, again, realistic, like sustainable expectations. It's just, we are playing this game like adults, I guess, rather than playing it like children. It's like, look, we're not expecting you to put in 100-hour weeks because then you're going to burn out and you're going to want to go work a traditional job where we don't ask that from you. So that really, like, we do the sprints, we set goals, we expect it, we know things happen. So you expect 80% of completion on the goals. We pick a sustainable pace, right? It's like I go to the gym 3 times a week, not 7 times a week. I work 40 hours a week, but I'm going to do that 50 weeks a year. I'm not just going to like, well, I want to build this business. Let me put some time in. It's like the same thing with my podcast. It's like I still have it. It's kind of in a middle ground here. But when we first started, it's just 1 a week. We weren't like, we're going to start a podcast, publish every single day, burn out after 30 days. It's like, no, I did 1 a week and I kept that for 4 years. It's like same thing with a weekly newsletter. If you're saying, oh, I'm going to start email marketing, I'm going to send an email every day, not sustainable. You're not going to stick with it. You're going to burn out. Not going to happen.
Yep.
What is sustainable is to say, I'm going to write an email every day for the next 30 days and then evaluate and commit to that. And then say, and after that, what have I learned from this? Okay, this was useful, but maybe I only need it once a week. Just putting like time boundaries around things is also super practical in terms of like, how do I actually make sure this happens?
Yeah.
So creating well-defined experiments for doing things and then just doing something at a sustainable pace. So like, I'm going to start this new habit and just don't say like, oh, I'm going to do it forever. Like you're just not, like, you're just probably not. But like, can you say, you know what? I think that I can, at least for the next month, do this with 0 mistakes.
Yeah.
For the next 30 days.
Yeah.
Like I've done 75 hard a couple times, big fan of the program. And I've oftentimes failed at creating a self-designed version of 75 hard because like you finish it and you're like, this is way more than is necessary. Like I would like to do something like this, but easier. Yeah. Because this is too much to do 365 days a year.
Yeah.
And like, I think it was September, October, I made a self-designed one that was like, 15 minutes of exercise minimum a day, around the 90 minutes minimum, follow a diet, but the diet wasn't that strict, but it's still like something that it's better to set something that you just know you're going to hit 100% success. Yeah. Like I think I can work 40 hours a week all year with a couple of vacations rather than saying I'm going to pull 100 hours this month and you're burned out and you can't touch a computer.
Yep.
So if what you're doing is entrepreneurial, it's going to be hard. It's going to take a long time. And the only way you're going to be able to stay on the train for the whole time is picking sustainable pace of play.
I absolutely love that, Matt. Lewis, this has been a pleasure. And it's just amazing because we're very opposite, which I think opposites attract, and it's good because you have yin to the yang. It's me and my business partner. And I feel like this is a very technical podcast. And I'm really excited for our viewers and listeners out there to take some things today from the show and like apply it to their business. And I'm really excited for the short form clips and like giving the value because then they're going to get into the podcast and they're going to be like, whoa, what am I watching right now? And really ask themselves the question, like, what are you committed to? Because that's one thing that we push for these agents is to be more tactical and practical and get focused on the avatar and what are your SOPs and KPIs. And like, I just love the systems, the processes and everything that you put into play. And this is as simple as an email marketing company, right? Mm-hmm. And you guys have real estate agents. You guys have real estate company out there. You're working with buyers, you're working with sellers. Like, it doesn't matter what type of business it is. Like when you hire, you delegate, tech's out there for a reason. Leverage it. Lewis, this has been amazing. Go follow this guy. Links are down below. Go to his Instagram. Check out the company. You want to hire him, hit him up. Tell him that you saw him on Real Estate First Technology. And I appreciate your time today, bro.
Oh, yeah, man. Thanks so much for having me.
Of course. And hey, like, subscribe. See you on the next one. New podcast episodes every week on, what are they? Monday, 8 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. See you all next week. Until the next one.